Hello, and welcome to today's WinX Today session. I am super excited and thrilled to have here Oran Hollander. Oran is the Chief Information Security Officer at Telefonica and advisory board member at Akeyless. I hope I pronounced this correctly. However, he can, of course, share more about this just in a few seconds. I will get him in, and today, within the Cybersecurity Month, awareness is something what we want to talk about today. So for everybody who is new to cybersecurity, we will dive in all those topics one after another, and we will also briefly go into leadership topics because, as you know, I'm absolutely passionate about leadership, and Oran has a great approach towards his diverse team, and I can't wait to hear more about that. So without any further ado, taking Oran into our stream here today. Oran, thank you so much for taking the time and joining me here today. Would you mind to just briefly introduce yourself a little bit personally and, of course, your professional journey?
Sure thing. First of all, thank you, Sylvia. It's a pleasure being here. Can't believe I'm actually sharing the stage with my LinkedIn hero, so thank you for the time. Happy to share a little bit about myself. So my name is Oran, CISO for Telefonica Germany. I've been in the cybersecurity industry now for over 18 years. I'm Israeli. Started in the Israeli Defense Forces and moved through different roles in the public and private sector until I found myself in my current role, which I love.
Thank you so much for sharing. And you are living right now in Munich, right?
Yes, the land of pretzels and beer.
And this is where we actually met each other as well. So just briefly to give the audience a little bit of a context, you can of course add on whatever pops up in your mind. The time when Oran actually moved to Germany for the first time, as far as I know, we've met, and I was basically joining him on his onboarding journey and supporting him within Telefonica as HR business partner. And this is the time where, of course, Oran arrived in Germany, but also started to build up a very great thing. Would you like to share a little bit about that? Because I think this is very impressive, especially for those who are super new to this topic.
Sure thing. So yeah, Sylvia was basically the face that greeted me in Munich when I arrived, when I started my journey with Telefonica. And when I came in, it was really basically to set up the cybersecurity function in its new form. And it was taking the existing team that was considerably smaller at the time, distributed across different areas, and bringing into a centralized function that nowadays, together with all people involved, is roughly 80 people. So it's been quite a journey. And Sylvia's help in the beginning actually was one of the critical cornerstones in this journey.
And what would you say, how can someone, especially for those aspiring leaders or new people in tech, people who are currently thinking about maybe going in this direction, because you are, of course, one of those few, I believe, focusing on this topic as well. So this is not something what the majority is doing. How could someone imagine your day-to-day life, especially when it comes to this topic of ongoing threat of any kind of cyber attacks, but on the other side, never knowing what is going to happen, right?
Yeah, definitely. So cybersecurity is a subset of risk, and that's also how we take it. You can't really do your job well if you don't understand the business. So all the technical knowledge in the world won't save you when it comes to making a business decision. So it's important to know your technicals right, and that's why we put a lot of emphasis with people coming in with the right technical backgrounds. But still, you need to understand what the business is all about. So that's one aspect that I would say is very important. The other one is when you're thinking about the CISO day-to-day, it's just filled with uncertainty. So you need to feel very comfortable with uncertainty in order to really be able to succeed in the role. It's important to make plans, and you need to have them in place. You need to hypothesize what are the type of attack scenarios you're going to be dealing with, what are your threats, and plan accordingly. But if you are only relying on plans, then sometimes things don't pan out exactly as you might expect, and then you're caught off guard. And then it's all about keeping calm, have trust in your people, and also, yeah, just embracing the uncertainty and going with it. So probably one of the key things that I would mention.
And this plays, of course, very much in today's time when we look at Corona and all the things that are happening right now for business, especially as well, of course, that we have to embrace uncertainty. And this is, by the way, one of the most challenging things for human beings just by nature. Our brain doesn't like it at all. But I don't want to go into this topic. I would like to hear from you. How did you actually get into this topic like cybersecurity, information security at first stage? Maybe you take us a little bit back, because I think everybody is just wondering why cybersecurity, why information security?
That's a good question. Sometimes I ask myself as well. I got into it at a very young age. I fell in love with the topic at around the age of 16, and it actually started from watching a movie about the topic. And ever since, I got really intrigued. And my journey then started as soon as I went into the Israeli army. But I think the key reason behind why I love it so much, I think, is just the creativity that was needed at the time, tackling all these issues of how do you penetrate a system, how do you defend it. It just requires, I mean, there's creativity needed in a lot of different areas, but I always just found security really cool. It's really hard to explain sometimes why. I don't think that, it's necessarily cooler than what developers do, what operational people do. Super important, and also has a lot of magic in it. But cyber, to me, I don't know, it was always something different, something that felt a bit more edgy, cool, challenging. And yeah, I just got drawn to it ever since.
It makes sense, because every single attack, I guess, is something different, right? You never know where it's coming from and what is happening, what kind of system is going to be attacked, etc. And we will go into that topic in a few minutes. So I want to just go briefly and have an excursion, because this is what impressed me recently. We were in touch recently. I was running for Oran's team a performance management workshop, and within that I got a little bit of a look and insight on how you work with your people on a regular basis. And I thought that this might be very, very interesting, but also inspiring for everybody who's listening on how you lead a very diverse team. You can share more about that as well. But all of you were, even before the whole remote movement, like everybody worked from home, you're very international and people are kind of all over the place, as far as I understood it correctly. So would you like to share with us just briefly what are your tricks and tips, and how do you approach your work with a global team? And how many nations do you have in your team? This would be very cool to hear as well.
That's a good question. I think we're bordering on almost on the 20 nationalities across all different team members. Actually, the diverse nature of the team, the fact that it's so international, is probably one of the things that I'm most proud of. We're somewhat known in the company as the international team, and I really find it as a strength. So in terms of how do we approach it, because it's not just me. I myself can't do it. So the managers that are working together with me and the team that are managing the different functions within cyber, and generally the overall team culture of inclusion, is very important in making this happen. To me, the international nature, I see it more as a strength. People coming in from different cultures think differently, and they are more familiar with different types of systems and processes. So bringing all that together is really, really super interesting on one hand, and also culturally. I think a place of work, it's very important to do your job well, but it should also be a place where you come and you enrich your life also through other means. And the international nature, I mean, at least to me, when I talk to people from different countries and get to know their culture a little bit and talk to them about their origins and things like this, it's always been super interesting for me. It's also why I traveled the world when I was young, and also until today. And that's also why I like meeting people from different places. And I think we're doing so far a pretty good job in making people feel comfortable in terms of your origin is your strength rather than something you're judged by, God forbid.
And how do you make them comfortable? I think you have a little bit of a specific, like everybody you're doing within a team meeting sometimes, where you all share where you are from actually, and this probably pays into exactly what you've just said.
Yeah, it's funny that you're asking that. This is unplanned because we actually spoke about it recently in one of the team meetings. So yeah, because of Corona, first of all, yeah, we have people from different countries, and because of Corona, they're also now placed in different countries because some of them couldn't really travel. So it's really international in both ways. Per your specific question about about the how do we engage in conversation about it, then we have a thing we started during Corona time to meet more regularly in the team and have a background competition every week. And it's really helping atmosphere. People feel more connected to see each other more regularly. And now what we're doing is we're changing theme on a weekly basis. So for example, this coming week, actually it's tomorrow, we have a team meeting where everybody's supposed to come in with a background of their favorite travel destination and then share a minute about why was that your favorite travel destination? Why is this way? Why did you choose this? Tell us a bit the story about the travel. So, and following week, it will be something else. I can't say what it is because it's a surprise. And if any one of the team is watching, then I don't want to ruin the surprise. But it all has to do with your background, with your origins, and your life story.
That's such a great idea, and I think for everybody it also breaks a little bit their ice to share something personal and open up in all kind of areas that are not necessarily connected to your professional life and to your work. And especially during Corona, this gives people the visibility that we see each other, we understand each other, but we also hear each other. And this can, by the way, engage a lot of efficiency, productivity, and of course, engagement in itself as well. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think you shared with me as well that you were sharing like the flags from the countries as well. So everybody was basically tagging the flag. And I was like, this is so amazing as well. I love your creativity. And I think this is what shows your international team that you are basically approaching this whole leadership and tackle this leadership challenge within Corona from a very creative angle and point of view.
Yeah, the team continues to grow very strongly all the time. So as we recruit new people, we update the organizational chart to get everybody familiar with everybody coming in. And we've added a flavor of the flag. So I would want to credit my team for that, right? So it's all about everybody in the team is coming in with different ideas, just to add the flag, so everybody knows what's the origin of whoever is coming into the team, and it's slowly becoming to look like a world map. So it's pretty cool.
I love this idea, by the way. So whoever came up with that, and this is inviting ideas from your team and making it a whole team event out of it. Absolutely amazing. And now coming from how you lead your team, what do you think would be your number one leadership advice during times of uncertainty for leaders out there who are maybe right now struggling to, and maybe they don't have such a creative team behind them? What do you think would be your number one leadership advice to them?
I would probably try to combine two, but it would be keep your people close and be authentic with them as they're close to you. So those are probably the two main things, especially in Corona time. We're talking about uncertainty. So Corona is a pretty current issue and situation that we have to manage. And yeah, we've increased the frequency of the team meetings. So we see each other every week and video on, making sure that people are closer together. And you want to show your people that, you're also a human being. You understand their issues, especially in the beginning of Corona times when schools were closed, people were home with their families, and it wasn't easy. Having an open conversation about it, making them feel comfortable about it, encouraging open conversation and people to feel comfortable to come to you with their issues rather than giving them the feeling that they just need to tackle it themselves, because that's sort of leaving them to hang out to dry, and that's not really how you should be approaching it. So keeping them close, having real authentic conversations with them, yeah, it's probably number one advice that I can give. I'm not reinventing the wheel, but I would emphasize that one.
And that's one of the most challenging ones, because loneliness and feeling isolated during Corona can be such a big topic. And like you've just shared, keeping people close digitally is something what can break many challenges along the journey. Thank you so much for sharing. I think that's something what we often forget, to keep each other close while we are far away, right? And now, just because of the theme, and this is how this whole thing actually came up, kind of, is about our Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So our whole interview is placed so beautifully within this Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And would you like to share any kind of, first of all, for everybody, what is cybersecurity awareness, or what is cybersecurity in itself, and any advices on how people can actually deal and start to build up this awareness in order to protect themselves at home?
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, security in the end, or let's talk from the attack perspective, right? So cyber attacks are basically a way to abuse functionality in a way it wasn't intended to be. So if you have a certain system and it's supposed to do something, attacking it means making it operate in a way that is not expected, right? So for example, it shouldn't be giving you sensitive data, but if you're able to manipulate it, you might be able to extract it. So that's the basis for all cyber attacks, and cybersecurity in the end is all about trying to defend against this manipulation of regular systems. That's the whole story, but obviously it becomes more and more complex. And as functionality expands, then cybersecurity expands. That's why it's a never-ending journey, because we keep enhancing functionalities and the way systems work and the way networks work and so on. In terms of awareness and why is awareness important, what is that? So a lot of security issues arise from basic things. Clicking on emails, sharing things you're not supposed to be sharing. So a lot of security issues come from people just behaving, let's say, innocently or naively, right? So not intending to do something wrong, but just not being aware that something is putting either themselves or the company they work for at risk. So awareness is all about bringing that to the front, making people understand, at least on the working level, that different actions that they take can affect the business. And another aspect of awareness is also for management. So to understand what does it mean when they make decisions and how can that affect security posture. And in terms of how to increase awareness, I would probably say over communicate, but communicate in a way that resonates with your target audience. So you shouldn't be communicating in too much of a technical fashion when you're trying to talk to regular non-techie people. You need to be logical. You need to make it easily consumable for them to understand what you expect of them or what they need to do. If you bombard them with information, they would move on. Yeah, so our attention capacity is only going downwards as we're being exploded with data. So I would say, yeah, make sure that you communicate crisply and make the key points you want to make.
Mm-hmm. And any advices thank you so much for sharing. That's such a great point. Our attention is, by the way, lower than from a goldfish for all the millennials out there. So it's exactly just like this. Unfortunately, we are the, phone on all the addictions, what we have at the moment, what we can start to become conscious about or be driven by one or the other way, our choice. But if we are talking about cybersecurity, any kind of advice, and we will go into the topic a little bit later as well, of how companies would start now to communicate, and like you just said, for non-tech people, probably the majority of us, any kind of advices for someone at home, how can we start to protect ourselves when it comes to those attacks?
Yeah, so I would say most attack vectors on private people. So I'm going to focus on private people rather than companies for now, for people to have something to take home. But most of the attacks on private people are really taking advantage of basic things. So that means sending phishing emails, taking advantage of Sorry, Sylvia, you wanted to say something?
No, in this phishing topic, it's what I would love to get into that as well, because I think this is very crucial for everybody who is at home, no matter if this is your company laptop or your private laptop.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. But yeah, most of the attacks are taking advantage of let's say low-hanging fruit, and the reason for that is cyber attacks it's an economical engine. There's an economical engine behind them, right? So there's a financial ecosystem, meaning that attackers that are attacking you are trying to make, depending on their motives, right? But most of the time we're trying to make a buck, and they're not going to try to make a buck if it costs them $2. And that's a lot of the financials behind it. So when private people are being attacked, the money involved is not high. And that's why attackers are not going to invest. Again, there are always exceptions, don't catch me by the word, but they're not going to invest considerable resources in trying to attack private people unless they have very specific interests, because these people represent something beyond their private life. So that's why most vectors will be more basic. And in order to, let's say, safeguard yourselves, you should be focusing on the basics, which is be suspicious about everything you get via email, even from people you know, because that's a vector that is being used by attackers as well. They attack somebody close to you to send you an email through them. So always be suspicious, have a vigilant look on what you're getting on your email, update your software, browsers, anything running on your computer, your phone, operating system, whatever you can, update regularly, because a lot of issues come from that. And yeah, I would say the last thing would be careful with what you share online. So a lot of different services are asking you to hand out your information. Not everything is always mandatory. And even when they're asking you to give your information, you don't always have to give let's say, the most accurate information. It's depending on what you're trying to consume online, but just be careful. Yeah. So things like your address, other types of personal information can leak in different scenarios, and this happens regularly. So be very selective about what you share if you can.
Thank you so much for sharing. I didn't notice, like, I'm like not super, I look into that, but that's so interesting to understand, because many people avoid those updates. I used to be one of them. I was just running updates recently on my laptop and on my phone, but I was not aware of this. This is kind of a part of protection for ourselves as well. Thank you so much for sharing all the insights. I think this is super easy to remember and apply, especially when you're at home. And last but not least, I would love to get into this phishing problem. And I know this is something for personal people and, of course, for companies as well. The phishing awareness and phishing emails, this is how it's called. What can we think when we talk about phishing emails? Maybe let's start like that. What is this whole topic about phishing, and how can we start to create the awareness with phishing as in our professional and personal life?
Sure. The basis behind phishing is that if somebody's trying to attack you, he needs to reach you somehow. And there are different ways to reach you, but one of the easiest ways, which is the most static in terms of how much does it change, is your email address. So your email address, most of the time, unless it's, you're a highly sophisticated digital beast, you're probably using the same email address on a regular basis. And you know that if you send an email to that address, it will reach Sylvia or will reach whoever else's email I'm sending a message to. So it gives you a certain level of certainty in terms of you're reaching your target. That's one thing. Another thing is that email is a mechanism that is, let's say, allows you to reach a lot of different people automatically. So all you need is a list of emails. And I mean, the majority of emails being sent in the world today are machine-based, right? So they're not being sent by humans. So automating attacks becomes much more easily. So that's the basis of it. Once you're able to reach somebody, then the question is, how do you try to attack them? And one of the easiest ways that requires the least amount of financial effort is just tricking people. And that means making them press on a link that will take them to a website, for example, that looks like Facebook, that looks like, your banking account website and making you putting in the username and password for it, right? So it requires very small financial investment, but it's a very easy vector. And as we said, it's all about the financial ecosystem or the economical engine behind it. So if I send it to 10,000 people and only 10 will click, if I steal $1,000 from each, I make a good amount of money for the amount of investment that I made. So a good financial model. And that's why phishing becomes a very easy vector through which attackers are coming in. And it's also very difficult to protect against. So there are many different solutions, and some of them have different levels of effectiveness, but especially for private people, tackling phishing is not easy. So there are different ways of doing it, but I would say the basis that I would recommend is obviously vigilance and being very suspicious about emails that you're getting.
Thank you so much for sharing all the insights. So interesting, like even to me, and I'm not super foreign to this topic, as you might know, but it's absolutely interesting to know and to understand, and to first of all even create the awareness at first stage, right? That we have to be conscious about who is sending you the email. Do you really want to click exactly this email on the link and then get forwarded to this website? Or do you preferably can just open it in your own browser and not go through this link, and just maybe make this a new habit of yours, rather than consuming all the stuff that is coming in, because like you said, it's an economic engine behind this. So people around the world are just trying to make some money with you. And like you've mentioned, I was not aware of that it is an easy way to make some money with our normal way of behaving online. And basically digital by default is connected with creating some self-responsibility when it comes to using all those great things that I love, but it's sometimes challenging. And I got, by the way, I think an email, and I was straight away thinking about the phishing email just after now knowing about it. I never heard about this before, and I was like, okay, well, this email looks super not normal. So meaning I'm not going even to click on it, I'm going to ignore it. And this is how we can start to avoid to get attacked or be basically used from anybody around the world when it comes to cybersecurity and phishing awareness, and of course information security as well, because most of the time they want basically your data, exactly like you've shared an example. Do you have anything else? I think we've covered so many great insights, and looking at the time, I would love to hear from you. Anything else that would pop up in your mind, what you would like to share with the listeners, especially when it comes to cybersecurity, information security, or even the phishing awareness, anything that pops up in your mind that would be interesting to listeners in their personal or professional life?
I would say, well, in personal life, I would just recommend for people to get themselves as informed as they can. I wouldn't give one tip or the other, because it very much depends on people's appetite. But there's a lot of, in the same way that you would investigate a topic on your own, whether it's nutrition or sports or a hobby or whatever that is, you would go on YouTube, you would go to online resources. You can do the same for security. There's a lot of really good content. You can even go to Udemy, for example, and take courses that gives you a bit more of an understanding for people that are not so techy. But I would just reiterate what I mentioned in terms of where to focus as a private person, and that is, on being vigilant, updating software, and not sharing too much information. As public companies, I would just say leverage October as Awareness Month. We're also doing it in the company as well. It's very important. In the end, your human factor in the company is, well, let's say your people can be your strength, but also one of the weak links if you don't invest in them. So if you're only investing in technologies, in the end, a lot of phishing emails are completely logical. They have no sophisticated attack patterns. So you just send an email and you say, "Hi, this is the CEO. Please transfer money to this account," and it doesn't go through any specific system. So there are a lot of logical attacks that all the different controls in the world won't be able to 100% protect against, even though I know a lot of companies are trying, and they're doing a good job slowly. So you have to invest in awareness. You can't let that one go. And what a better time to do that than, International Cyber Awareness Month.
Yes. And like you said, investing in technology, this is what we do. There are lots of, that's great, especially when you look and think about digital transformation. This is one of my favorite topics ever. However, those people that are connected, and there are still people using technology, so you should have any kind of budget, but also, of course, awareness, and keep this in mind to invest into people. Thank you so much for sharing all the insights. And I'm going to close the interview with our last question, something what I love to ask and just hear the answer. What would you say was your biggest win in your professional life so far?
It's a great question. I would say probably helping my people grow to bigger, better things. Without a doubt. So if I look back at all the people that I worked with, either that I managed directly or indirectly, and seeing where they are today, that's probably the biggest win.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. That's really beautiful, especially as a leader. I think leading by example is something what helps and supports everybody in order to reach whatever you have to reach in your business or even in your personal life. Thank you so much for your time, Oran. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with all the people. I think absolutely great advices and insights. I've learned quite a lot for myself here. So thank you so much. And keep on growing and doing what you do within this whole area of cybersecurity and information security.
My pleasure, Sylvia, my LinkedIn hero. Thank you.